Last fall, when my robotics team started building these quadcopters, we found that some of the high school students had trouble installing lock nuts onto these brushless motors for the first time. And the problem was that the nylon inserts in the lock nuts were very tough, and it's hard to grab these motors unless you have really, really strong hands. And when you would install them for the first time, some people had trouble twisting these nuts on to get them to break in. Once the threads were cut, then it was okay, but getting them on for the first time was awful hard. So I designed a wrench, 3D printed wrench, that fit onto the top of the motor so that you could hold on to this little handle and turn on the nut like that, which is great for when you're breaking in the nuts, but when you're installing props, you still have to hold on to the motor in order to get the nut on, because once the props are installed, you can't get this wrench off underneath one of the props. I came back to that design when I wanted to come up with a way to swap props off of my quadcopters with only one hand, and I tried a few different designs of different ways to do that, but the one that I came up with was based off of the same style of prop wrench, which interfaces to the top of the motor. So it's got little nubs that go down into the cutoffs that are in the top of the motor. That allows you to get a good grip on the motor. The trick is that when you're swapping out props, you need to be able to put on and take off your tool when the prop is in place. So what I did was I came up with basically a socket that has the same features that you would see in something that would go right to the top of the motor, but also has slots cut for a prop to fit in place. So if you want to install a prop on this motor, you would take a prop, set it on, and then take a nut and put it on just finger tight. Then I line up the prop blade with the arm, and then you take the protrusion that comes off of this, the ridge that comes off of this brushless motor, and you line it up opposite of that. Then you can install that tool on there, and then use your thumb on the nubs, and there, now it's in place. And then you take this tool off just by pulling it off. So that's an easy way to install and remove your props with just one hand. Now it's even easier if you do it with two hands. So you can see that on this motor, where I would stick this in place, put it in place, and I could just hold on to this with my other hand and then take this off really easily. So two hands is always easier than one, but this design lets you swap props on and off with just a single hand. And the way that these slots are cut in this tool, I can use either the Gemfan Wind Dancer 5043-3 props that I use, or I can also use these props from HQ Prop. These are DP 5 by 4.3 by 3 props. So if I wanted to use one of those, I do the same thing. First I line this up so that the top of the star on the top of the motor is out. Line it up, put the blade facing in, screw on my nut, then take my tool, put it in place, and then just use my thumb on the handle and turn it down in place. And then tighten it, and then you can pop it right off. Now you've got a tight prop. So hopefully this kind of design concept will be useful for other people. This specific one works with these specific motors and either of these two props. These motors are Eco 2 series motors from Emax, and this one is a 2306. I use these motors on 2 of my 5-inch quads. If you have different motors, you would first need to come up with a tool like this that interface to the top of the motor bell, and then once you can do that, then you can adapt it into a tool like this that allows you to add and remove the props once the props are installed. So hopefully this will come in useful for some people.